Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll make a start now. Um, Thank you for joining us. My name's Dave Jackson. I'm a founder and CEO of Clicktools. I'm based here in the UK. Today's webinar is going to look at the relationship between customer experience, customer feedback, and the financials of the business. We're probably going to take about 20 minutes or so and be followed by a short Q&A session. The slides will be posted on SlideShare and hopefully on YouTube after the event. We are going to record the session. In terms of questions, there will be a Q&A session, as I mentioned. If you would like to ask a question, rather than do that audio, to ensure that we don't get a lot of hassle from background noise, all participants are muted. So if you could use the chat function, please, in the GoToWebinar control panel, you'll find it at the bottom of that panel itself. And I'll say a couple more things about logistics at the close of the webinar itself. So I want to start just by saying a few words of introduction about Clicktools itself. For those of you that don't know us, we began life in 2001 on the south coast of the UK. It's supposed to be warm and sunny, but if anybody's seen the news, it's definitely not so in the UK at the moment. It's very cold and snowy. Our early business, and still the biggest use for Clicktools, was around surveys. We started out as a survey application, and that's very much what many of our customers still use us for. But very early in our life, we took two decisions. The first was that feedback is actually about more than just surveys. And this lesson was learned from our customers who started to tell us that they were using Clicktools for things other than surveys. They started using Clicktools for call scripts and for web forms, and to gather all sorts of customer information at different points of interaction with their customers. And we decided, therefore, to support this and started to talk about feedback beyond surveys. The second and probably the most important decision was that feedback was just one element of customer information, and the real power of it lay when you integrated that feedback with other sorts of customer information. And for us, the natural home for that was and still is CRM systems. We were the first application to integrate with Salesforce. We were the first survey application on the App Exchange. We were the first European software partner for Salesforce. We are the only survey tool that now integrates with Salesforce and Oracle and Microsoft and Sugar CRM, and watch this space in the future for probably more of that. And that's what we got to what we are now, and this is how we describe what we do. Clicktools is a tool that allows you to collect customer information through surveys, forms, and scripts, to centralize that information in CRM, and thereby enabling you to act on that, on the insights that generates automatically. And I'll be talking a little bit more later on about how that relates to generating the financial performance that we're looking for. So let's get on to the first topic that I want to talk about, and that's to start to examine the business value of customer experience. Because the whole point of collecting feedback is around improving customer experience, and the whole point of driving customer experience is around improving financial performance. Now, if you look, a winning customer experience has positive benefits on both sides of the profit and loss account. Satisfied customers, and I'll explore what that means a little bit later on, are more likely to buy from you. They're more likely to buy the same things from you again and again, and they're more likely to recommend you to other potential customers. And the impact of that is increased revenues. So a very positive impact on the income side of the profit and loss account. But equally, a good customer experience can help you on the cost sides of the equation. Retention, advocacy, and cross-sell or upsell all reduce your cost of sale. Advocacy is a very low cost, if not free, form of marketing. And with the power of social media today, much more powerful than ever before. And the cost of handling complaints falls as customers are satisfied with the experience that you deliver. And finally, if you get the experience right, the costs of servicing fall. There was some great research done, albeit a few years ago, that shows a dissatisfied customer of public services, and this is research from Canada, are more likely to call you more often, to complain more, and therefore increase the costs of servicing those particular customers. And by the way, this is also true of people in the private sector that have a monopoly. So even though the customer may not have a choice in terms of going elsewhere, they still will make their dissatisfaction felt and in your pocket. So there's a real impact of customer experience on profitability. And the effect of this has been demonstrated recently from some research that's been published only this year by Oracle. Almost half of customers say that they always or often will pay more for a superior customer experience. That's not to say, by the way, that they'll pay ridiculously more, but they will accept a premium for the experience that they want. And even more perhaps importantly, almost 3 out of 4 said they'd stop buying from a company after one bad experience. Just one bad experience, by the way. And if you look at that bottom bar, of that 70%, 64% went straight to a competitor. So you actually were hit with a double whammy. Not only did you not get the business, but your competitor gained from your inability to deliver a good customer experience. Now, the interesting thing now is, when we talk about customer experience, what are we talking about? And this is our view. We call this our picture of the total customer experience. And we view it very much as a holistic thing because that's the way the customer sees it. They absorb information and experiences in the round and they build their perception of your company, of your business, on that totality of interactions, information, and experiences. Note also it's their perception, which may differ from what actually happens. It may differ from your view of it, but it is their perception. Also note that what we're talking about here is often not always rational. Our decisions, even in a business-to-business context, are based in the subconscious and largely the emotional part of the brain. There's great research that shows the impact of how we feel and value and the impact that has on our decision making. And we advise our customers to keep that in mind when they're building their feedback and customer experience metrics. So let's take a look at these 6 elements in a little bit more detail. It starts with the product or the service that you offer. That's the core of the customer experience that you deliver. And whilst differentiation here is possible, it's not always sustainable in the long term. There are some great examples. A couple of years ago, Apple was quoted as having a much superior customer experience based on the quality and the experience that the products developed. We already see other companies catching up to some of that. So in many industries, the product alone is rarely sufficient to sustain a competitive advantage. The second thing that customers are often looking for are to deal with companies that make it easy to do business with. We're all very busy. We don't have a great deal of time. We want to be able to do what we want to do when we want to do it, not when the company wants us to do it. So taking away all the obstacles and the frustrations to doing business is important to success. If you look at the things that Amazon do in terms of how hard they try to remove any of the frustrations and the barriers to make it easy, things like the one-click ordering and the online tracking of deliveries. And increasingly, we want to be self-service capable. So we want to do things our way in our time. The most successful example of that, perhaps in the last 50 years, has been the use of ATMs for dispensing money. Given the choice now, even when there's no queue, most people will go to an ATM than they will to a cashier and in a bank branch. But being easy to do business with in itself is not enough. We also think it's important that companies are nice to do business with. I'm sure you can all think of instances where you've come across companies, they've got the right product for you, and it's not difficult to buy, but when you've interacted with people, when you've interacted with a company, it's left a sour taste, a bad taste in your mouth. And remember, we are still humans. We still look at relationships. We still think about the people-to-people element of a business. So being nice to do business with, separate to being easy to do business with, again, is an important point. Reputation is that view that you have of an organization, quite often based on things which are outside the transaction as a whole, or the series of transactions. So the best example of this recently is how many people, particularly in the US, but elsewhere as well, have stopped buying gasoline from BP because of what happened in the Gulf. The product's not changed. Being easy to do business with hasn't changed. Whether they were nice to do business with hasn't changed. But the reputation that event generated has led people away from buying from BP. So a lot of these brand-based things, again, quite often these secondary things that we might think of from an organization have a significant impact on what we think about that organization, our willingness to buy from them, and therefore our experience of them. The fifth part of our total customer experience picture is around engagement. How can we make it not just easy to do business with them, but provide them with information, provide our customers with information, with tools, with support that allows them to start to use our products and our services to maximum advantage? How can we build that relationship with our customers? And what is it that customers want from that relationship? So how do we engage them in the short term and in the longer term? And of course, we have to do all of this with an eye on value for money. Now, the research I mentioned earlier says that people are willing to pay a premium, but only to a degree. You can build loyal customers and you can use elements of this total customer experience to generate that premium. But if the gap between what you're charging and what people can get from elsewhere starts to grow too big, that loyalty that you've built up ceases to become elastic. It's not permanent. So we do see companies able to make and generate significant profits from a customer experience premium, but it's not endless. And what you've got to do is start to think about which elements of this mix matter to your customers at which stages of the journey that you're taking them through. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means a little bit later. Now, what matters is that a company is able to figure out what that means for themselves. What's your view? So we can't say that there's a common set, but this again, going back to that research from Oracle, draws on some of the things that matter to customers, particularly in a call center and a contact center environment. And if you look through this list, one-touch resolution, rapid answers, not having to repeat information, contact transaction history known. Many of them relate to aspects not of product, but of being easier to do business with and being nice to do business with. There's one other common thread that runs through quite a few of these aspects. And that is that if you're going to deliver that sort of service, if you're going to deliver that quality of experience, the things highlighted in green particularly can't be done effectively unless you have a single view of the customer. So you can't avoid having to ask customers to repeat information they provided for you unless you've captured that and make that available to the rest of the organization. You can't make it easy for people to be transferred if you can't capture what customers have said to you in different ways, perhaps across different channels, and make that available where that's necessary. And again, we'll talk a little bit more later on about the value of a single view of a customer. In terms of the financial value of customer experience, success means going the extra mile. This data looks at the financial return from a benchmark group of companies. It was actually put together by a benchmark group called PIMS, Profit Impact of Marketing Strategies. And what the PIMS database has looked at is they've compared the quality of the experience that these companies deliver to financial performance, in this case, as measured by return on investment. Now, note what that measure is at the bottom. It is customer perceived quality relative to the competition. Two important things there. It's customer perceived quality, not an arbitrary measure. So it's the customer's perspective of that experience. And it is relative to the competition. It's not how well you're doing, it's how well you are doing versus the people that you are competing with. And success is about figuring out what aspects of the customer experience matter most and delivering them better than the competition. Note also the shape of the graph. Now, it is possible to earn a return by having a customer experience that's worse than competitors. And I'm sure you can all think of a few examples of companies where the service isn't great, but because of some other mix in that experience, you'll still go with them. But now look at the shape of the increase as that experience gets better compared to the competition. And look at the difference notably between average and better than average, good. 22 to 23 points. So satisfaction delivers a marginal benefit. Now look at the difference between good and superior, 23 to 32 points. So it's really being head and shoulders above competition in the things that matter most to customers that makes that significant difference. And the reason behind this is that satisfaction alone is actually quite a weak emotion. And if you want to understand how dangerous it is just to focus on satisfaction, try this simple test. The next time that your husband or wife or partner or friend cooks you a meal and at the end of that asks, "How was that?" answer, "Satisfactory." Then quickly dodge the pan that's likely to come flying your way or be prepared to sleep on the couch, because satisfaction just doesn't cut it. Part of the research that I've referenced might suggest that actually some of this may be very familiar to you. But if that is, understand that you are different to many that sit in the C-suite. And let me explain why. So when asked how many of their customers would switch following a poor experience, the C-suite respondents to this survey said 49% will switch following a poor experience. And 44% believe that customers will pay more for a superior experience. Now look at what happens when the customers of those companies are asked the same questions. 89% say they have switched following a poor experience, and 86% say they will pay more for a superior experience. So there seems to be a gap between understanding of customer experience in the C-suite and what customers actually do. Perhaps the C-suite doesn't believe that customer experience has the impact that it does on customers. Look at this also. When asked about their ambitions, 91% of companies said they wanted to be a leader in customer experience. But only 21% of them believe their customer experience program is advanced. Is there a lack of vision in the C-suite? Is it ambition? Or is it just a real challenge that they don't believe they can do much about it? I suspect it's a combination of all three. But there's research again that shows that there is real value in customer experience. This data from 2012 from Forrester looked at the impact of superior customer experiences on industries across the US. So in the hotel business, $1.36 billion available through improved purchases, less churn, and the impact of word of mouth. Huge financial benefits for organizations that get customer experience right. And I think if we're going to start making the case for customer experience, then we have to start to talk to people in the C-suite about this financial impact. Now, I don't know what that financial impact is for your company, but I can give you a tool that can help you with this. If you haven't already, I'd encourage you to visit our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Clicktools, and you'll see a link to the customer experience calculator. You can put in some simple data like average customer spend, number of customers, retention rate, and a few other bits of information. And it'll give you a feel for the financial benefits that you can get by improving your customer experience. Now, I don't claim that that's a comprehensive model, but it is a great way to engage skeptical CFOs and their colleagues in the C-suite. And I find the most effective way of using the calculator is interactively with them. Sit down with them as a group, start to put the numbers in, make assumptions, change the numbers, see what the effect is. Ask them to consider what they think they would need to do to change some of those drivers, and show them potential benefits of investing in customer experience. And that benefit is a financial benefit. And I think that's a very important point. I'm a passionate believer in customer experience, full stop. It's my business and was before Clicktools. In fact, I've been in this field since about 1988. I am that old. But my passion stems not just from I think it's a nice to do, not just because I think it's more enjoyable to work in an organization where customers enjoy what they do and enjoy those interactions, but I believe in it because I know the financial benefits of it. I understand its financial impact. I can tell you exactly the revenue and profit impact of a 1% reduction in churn in my business, and I know it's significant. I know how business we get from existing customers and how much we can generate from improved advocacy. And those numbers are not insignificant, even in a relatively small business like Clicktools. So we have to start to talk and put customer experience not just in an anecdotal sense, but in a financial sense. Now, I want to turn now to the second part of the webinar, which is going to look at the relationship between feedback and profit. And again, I think it's important to look at feedback from a customer perspective, but also we need to start looking at feedback from a financial perspective as well. Now, the starting point, I think, for all of this in terms of customer experience and your feedback programs is the customer journey. And that's right from, in fact, before they become a customer. So it is really understanding what stages a customer goes through with you. And it's done, by the way, from the buyer's perspective, from the customer's perspective, not from your processes. In fact, I wrote a blog article a couple of months ago entitled, "Is Your CRM Wrong Way Round?" I believe we should be building our CRM systems around the customer journey, not around our sales process, because that's what it's there for. It is about customer relationship management. It's not about process management per se. And the other thing, by the way, is what we're looking for here is a designed customer experience, a purposefully designed customer experience. And it has to be based on an understanding of what matters to your customers. In other words, which of those 6 elements of the total customer experience, what mix matters most at those different stages. Just bear with me a moment. And by the way, the first decision you have to make is, which customers are you doing this for? So be very clear about who your chosen customers are and build your customer journey and your feedback mechanisms and your measurements and therefore your proposition and the rest around those chosen customers. In most industries, it's very difficult to be all things to all people. It's very rarely a route to success. Now, part of the design of this customer journey is what feedback and other information do we need to collect to deliver that winning customer experience. And as the diagram shows, this information all goes into this pot called CRM. It all builds up that single view of the customer, because that can then be used to guide the actions, to personalize the interactions with customers. And feedback and its responses, rather than being just let's do an annual Do You Love Us survey, need to reflect this customer journey. Now, we don't do customer journey mapping in the way that some of the consultancies do, but we have worked with some of our customers in helping them understand those interactions, and from those interactions, what feedback do you need to collect and how do you get that into CRM? And if you sign up for one of our demos, we'll show you exactly how that's done relatively easily. Now, so what happens is it starts to become an event-driven activity, a customer-driven activity, rather than something which is process-driven and driven by your timetable. And if you look at the effort, you might think, well, that's going to involve a huge amount of effort. But if you look at the effort that's involved in gathering feedback and acting upon that feedback, centralizing that information in CRM, you might think it's going to increase. But in a well-designed program, that doesn't have to be the case. Now, if you look at how the workload and the time and effort and therefore money is spent on typical feedback programs, it follows this sort of pattern. A huge amount of time and effort spent in collecting and centralizing that information, then a huge amount of effort spent in compiling that information in a way that you can then act upon it. A well-designed customer journey program that's fully integrated with its CRM can shift this profile considerably. So Clicktools, with its CRM integration, shifts the effort from collecting and centralizing the information. In fact, that effectively halves. In some cases, it can disappear completely. Many of our customers are what can be nicely described as set and forget. They build their feedback mechanisms, their feedback systems, they integrate them with CRM as a one-off activity, and then it just runs. All they focus on is what's the data telling us and what action do we need to take. And again, because that's the first stage of that, the reporting of that, the alerting of that, the creation of the activity to drive that is automated, even that amount of time shifts considerably. And just to give you an example, our own feedback program involves 7 event-triggered surveys, all of which are deployed without any manual intervention whatsoever. So the collect piece for us is totally automated. The centralized piece for us is totally automated. And we have business rules that make sure that customers aren't over-surveyed, and we get that data in CRM, and if people are dissatisfied or request contact with us, the action piece is automatically generated. Now, by the way, let's be clear here. What I'm saying is that we automatically generate the activity for someone to follow up on. The taking of that activity is a different thing. And this is where a lot of organizations fail to exploit value out of their feedback programs. They spend all this time and effort into collecting the information, into reporting it, even into integrating CRM, but don't do that last final critical piece, the action piece. It's a bit like the saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The acting piece is very much a piece around leadership and the culture of the organization. And on the action piece is an area where time and effort has to be spent, because to get the broader benefit, you have to take the action piece. Now, if you want to understand how your organization can benefit from automating some of that activity, there's a second calculator, same place, facebook.com/clicktools, and you'll find the second ROI calculator, and this looks at how you can move that profile from red to blue and how much money you might be able to save by doing that. And by the way, if you want one of our people to work with you in looking at some of those figures, let us know. We'll be sending out an email after the event. Respond to that. We're more than happy to get someone to talk to you and show you how some of those savings can be generated and work out what they can be for your organization itself. Now, in terms of the action piece, if we look at the broader picture of feedback, remember also we're not just talking about surveys. Gathering the feedback, the measurement piece, is no point in doing that unless you take the action piece. I call this my butterfly model, and I always say a butterfly can't fly with one wing. You can't do the measurement, so there's no point in doing the measurement unless you take the action. And it's very difficult to take the right action if you don't do the right measurement. So if we just break this down, it starts, we've talked about that customer journey, event-triggered program. And the events is all around getting feedback around a specific event or touch point in that customer journey. And this drives any necessary one-to-one contact with a customer And also, if you aggregate the information across that event, you've then got the information you need to understand how well that process is working from the customer's perspective. Now, this is one of the things that Amazon have done so very well. In fact, there's a whole book being written about it. It's called The Best Service is No Service. And they use huge amounts of event-driven information, not just surveys, but all their web traffic information, all their feedback information, even information from suppliers, looking at how those events are being delivered, and use that in their process to drive constant improvements in the service that they offer. And it's perhaps no surprise that Amazon often comes out in the top 5 companies for quality of customer experience. You can then start to aggregate those views, put that together with relationship information to give you a view of your relationship with a customer, or if you're in the retail industry, with a segment or a category, and then use that for your account management or your segment planning, your category planning. And the final piece of the measurement and action loop aggregates all of that information and takes in the wider market view, including, by the way, the views of non-customers. So one of the things that we should be doing is looking at our market and saying, who are the people out there that are part of our target market but aren't doing business with us? And why aren't they doing business with us? And we start to pull that much broader perspective together to try and form a view of the market and how we're doing in that market to drive our strategic agenda. Now, I'm not saying that these are the only pieces of information that you need, but they are increasingly important contributors to that decision-making process. And this is I want to explain this chart, and I think it's a very powerful way of starting to use feedback and use it in a way which makes a business case for what we need to do. So let me explain what we're trying to do here is pull together feedback data, transactional data, and financial data. So let's take the scenario where we have 100,000 customers who on average are spending $100 a year with us. And of those 100,000 customers, from our feedback, we know that 30% are satisfied. That's 300,000 of them. Sorry, 30,000 of them. 50% are neutral, and 20% are dissatisfied. And in NPS language, you could say we've got 30% promoters, 50% passives, 20% dissatisfied. We've got 10%, an NPS score of 10%. Now, if we also know, again from our CRM data, that of the satisfied customers, even 5% of those will churn. But of our dissatisfied customers, 50% of those will churn. We can put a number on those, we can then start to put a value on those, and we can start to understand how much of our business is at risk. Now let's say we'd taken the data from our feedback and the data from our CRM systems and started to understand how we can make some improvements in the experience that we deliver, and those improvements make a change. So now 60% of our customers are satisfied, 30% neutral, 10% dissatisfied. We've still got the same 5, 20 and 50% churn, although you could argue that if you've made those improvements, you might expect those to come down. But for the sakes of the example, I've kept it as is. And now we see our total revenue at risk's fallen from 2.1 to 1.45 million. We've saved almost $750,000. Now, it's not difficult to do this type of calculation, provided you can bring the information from your feedback programs and your other CRM data together, which is why one of the reasons that we believe passionately in building a single view of the customer in CRM. Once you've got all this data in one place, that's half of the battle. It is possible to do it without that. You spend a huge amount of time and effort in building the models, in cleaning the data, which if you've got that single view of the customer, you just don't need to do. And by the way, we have a more detailed article. You can take this even a stage further and say, well, if to move from this position of 30, 50, 20 in terms of satisfaction to 60, 30, 10, we could do a number of different improvements you can actually take this data and start to look at the return on investment of different programs for change in your customer experience. And if anyone's interested, again, we can share that information with you. So in summary, customer experience is a very, very effective business strategy, as well as being nice to do. The key is to focus on the impact of your customer experience on three key customer metrics: retention, advocacy, and share of wallet. That if you automate the administrative elements of feedback and you focus on the insight and the action that they drive, you can increase your financial performance. Remember, the administration is a necessary thing, it's a cost. You get your return from investing in feedback from the insights and the actions that you take. So if you haven't plugged that piece of the jigsaw in effectively, you're spending a lot of money and not getting the return. By the way, you're probably also annoying your customers, because when you ask customers for their feedback, when you ask them for information, they expect that you're going to use that feedback, that information, to their benefit. The cornerstone of a lot of this is to build and exploit a single view of the customer. It's why we have invested so heavily to become the leaders in centralizing feedback into CRM. I think the value of single view of the customer is hugely undervalued in many, many organizations. And the final message is that if you understand this well, and as I say again, if you want some help in doing this, then please ask. You have to start to relate what that feedback means into and what the customer experience means in financial performance terms. We all like to be nice, but we all like to be nice profitably. So that's the end of my presentation today. If it's generated any questions, we've got some time for questions now. Please use the chat function. I just need to unmute one of my colleagues so that they can put the questions to me. If you want to contact me, there's my contact details. If you want further information, either drop a note to me or contact your customer success manager or your account exec, and we'd be happy to take that up. So let me just.
Thank you, David. We'll just wait a second here for some questions. I do have one question, David. So when so many departments in an organization want their own data, how do you make sure you are not over-surveying customers as they move through the customer journey? David, did we lose you? Well, apparently I've been unmuted, but we've lost David here. Give us a second. Hopefully he can get right back in.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, David. Sorry.
Okay. So sorry about that. Let me repeat. It's a very good question. And if you want, we can demonstrate that at any point in time. The answer is that the Clicktools and its integration with CRM allows this to be done relatively easily. You start to store information against the contact record around when you were last surveyed, when this contact was last responded to a survey, how many surveys, whether they've opted out of surveys, things like that. And you use those in business rules, either in workflow or using some functionality in Clicktools to automatically exclude people according to those business rules. Now, in that way, you avoid over-surveying people. And you can include those, you can extend those to include things like, if this person becomes eligible for 2 surveys, which one takes priority? But that's something that we've got in our demonstrations, and be happy to show you.
Great, David. Thank you. see here, scroll down to see if I have any other questions. Here we have a question. While it may be ideal to improve the entire customer experience, it's not always feasible. Where's the best place to get started?
Yes, the best place to get started is in those areas that matter most to customers. So you're quite right. You know, that total customer experience is often a very complex thing. It's often a multitude of things. What you need to get a handle on from some initial research is what are the things that matter most to the customers. So if you remember that customer journey picture, the way that we approach this and the discussions we have with our customers is, what are those key touch points? At that touch point, thinking about those 6 different elements of customer experience, at that touch point, what matters most to customers? And then when you drive that down into how you're measuring what sort of feedback you want. But the things that are at the top of that list in terms of what matters most to customers are where you put your initial efforts. Remember, it's about being better than the competition in the things that matter most to customers. So the key is to understand what those are. And by the way, one of the mistakes that many companies make is they just jump into making customer experience improvements without understanding that piece about what matters most to customers. And unless you test it with customers, you can often be wrong. I have seen many organizations say, we know what's important to our customers. And when you go and talk to customers, they express things which are completely different and talk about things that organizations have never ever considered. So quite often customers will talk about taking risk away or avoiding fear or meeting ambitions, things that never come up in product discussions at all.
Thank you, David. I think we have one last question here, and it is, often in our organization, the surveys are being used to drive strategic decisions. How do I help convince them to use them to make an individual impact on individual customers?
I think the best way to do that is to find a couple of examples where you've got some feedback from an individual customer where it's been followed up and it's made a difference to their intentions either to buy or to buy more. And you can put a financial value and can say, look, you know, we did this with one customer, we did this with 2 customers, the impact was $1,000, $100,000. If we did this for all of our customer base, the impact might be 1 million, 10 million. I think that's the only way to do that. And I think the more that we can relate what customers' feedback is telling us to how it's impacting the financial performance of the company, the more we're going to be listened to. Because chief execs like to know that their companies are nice, but they also like to know that their companies are profitable.
Great. I think that's all the questions I have. Did we have any other further questions? Remember, you can just put it in the chat window and we can answer those questions for you.
I can't see it at the moment, Casey.
All right. Sounds good. I think that we're going to wrap up here.
Right.
Great
Thank
job.
you all very much for your time. As I say, if you have any other questions, contact your CSM, contact your sales exec, contact me. We'll be happy to try and answer them. And if we can't answer them, we'll tell you we can't answer them. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.